Last September, it was my privilege to be invited along with members of our team to preach in several major cities of the Soviet Union, from the Baltic Sea to the heart of Siberia. The invitation came from the largest Christian body in the USSR, the Russian Orthodox Church, and also from the second major group, the All-Union Council of Evangelical Christians, Baptist. In each city, I preached in both Russian Orthodox cathedrals and Baptist churches, and in addition, I had a number of other speaking opportunities, over 50 altogether. It was an unforgettable opportunity and experience. We found crowded churches and great openness to the gospel wherever we went. There were no restrictions on what I could say. I preached exactly the same sermons there that I preach here. We were permitted to take our own television crew with us, and they were able to film some aspects of Soviet religious and social life, which have seldom been seen in the West. My primary purpose in going to the Soviet Union, of course, was to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ, just as I've done in many other countries all over the world. For many years I had prayed that God would open the door, if it was His will, for me to preach in the Soviet Union. I first visited Moscow as a tourist in 1959, and vividly remember praying with my associate Grady Wilson in the giant Lenin Stadium that God would someday open the door. In 1982, I was an observer and speaker at an international conference on peace made up of religious leaders held in Moscow under the sponsorship of Patriarch Pimen of the Russian Orthodox Church. I knew that I would be misunderstood and criticized. I would be accused of being used by Soviet propaganda. But the more I prayed and thought about it, the more I became convinced that God wanted me to go because we were certain that it would open future doors for proclaiming the gospel not only in the Soviet Union, but throughout the Eastern world. I also turned to the Scriptures. The Holy Spirit brought to my mind that Jesus commanded His disciples to go into all the world and preach the gospel, not just in capitalistic countries, or countries which are similar to ours. I also wanted to become better acquainted with the situation of Christians in the Soviet Union, which I think is often misunderstood by Americans. As is well known, of course, the Soviet system has an atheistic ideology, and at times religious believers have faced great difficulties and even persecution. And while there, I talked frankly with church and state officials about such issues as human rights and religious liberty, the printing of Bibles, for example, and restrictions on religious believers. I also expressed directly to Soviet officials the concerns that many people in the West have about these issues and the difficulties they cause for better international relations. At this dangerous hour of history, I also prayed that perhaps in some way unknown to me at that time, that God would use us in bringing a better understanding between our two countries.